there's some things that people probably mislead you about, which I like to tell you a bit about in regard to conscience, because usually what we find, or what I find, is that you don't listen to the voice of conscience all the time. And the question is, why not? You see, because you're very good people, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And they always tell you that it doesn't cost you anything to do the right thing, right? Now that's actually not true. If you think about it, it's much cheaper not to do the right thing. If you want to do the right thing, it's going to cost you. That's why people do the wrong thing, because it's cheaper, you know. And so we've been told that if you do the wrong thing, it'll cost you. If you do the right thing, it won't cost you. Anyway, we know it will cost you to do the wrong thing, but it actually costs you more to do the right thing. Just think about those times when you don't go according to your conscience. It's when it's really expensive to go according to your conscience. You have to think a little bit about those times when you don't go according to your conscience, to be able to put a finger on it. Because usually it means somewhat sticking your neck out, in which case somebody might well chop it off. So you don't want that. But it's a risk, you know. And there's another thing that I would want to share with you, and that is that probably you go against the voice of conscience about 4 or 5 times a day, more or less. And every time you do something against the voice of conscience, your conscience loses functionality. You probably didn't know that. And if you think about 4 or 5 times a day, plus what age you are, minus about 4 years. You don't start doing things against your conscience until you reach some sort of age of reason. And that's, you see, quite a lot of deactivated conscience. Do you see what I'm saying? And so this is why we have this subject of an activated conscience. It's a little bit subtle, a little bit deep, but we'll see anyway. Somebody's probably told you, don't be selfish. Right? Under what circumstances does somebody tell you don't be selfish? It's when you want to do something that's really good for you, but not necessarily usable for somebody else. Like if you want to take a course on something that's going to really make you happy and give you an extra skill, but right? Don't be selfish. Is it? Or you want to, you know, upgrade yourself in some other way, you know. Don't be selfish. Yeah? Or sometimes somebody will say, and this is probably when you're young, you're not good enough. You heard that one? Good enough for whom? Good enough for what? You know? And what does that do to you? It actually makes you lose confidence in your own judgment, your own evaluation, and it sets you up to feel that what other people direct you to do or to be or to want or to like or dislike is superior to your own judgment. Yes? So this is what we want to address here in the activated conscience, because you are good people, moral people, but morality, who invented morality? Do you know? So I will tell you who invented morality. Basically, in any society, in any group of people, in any country, in any culture, it is the elite of that particular group who actually invents the morality. Is that right? And when they do that, they do it in such a way that it favors themselves. And if you are not in that group, then it may not favor you. So it generally is biased against minorities, women, children, animals, and planet Earth, which suffers as a result. And so I have a problem with morality because it's slanted. And it does another thing. It tends to create double standards. Because you have a set of rules, and then if one of the group who made up the rules goes against them, they will say, actually, it doesn't apply to me. So we'll not deal with that. It applies to the other people. See? It's like that, isn't it? And so it also a little bit tends towards corruption. Right? So do we really need it? Yeah. Because my contention is this, that you have a voice inside that is very reliable, the voice of conscience. You know very well, in any given situation, what's the right thing to do. And if that coincides with morality or conventional morality, there isn't a problem. But there are times when it doesn't coincide. And at that time, the voice that you tend to favor is the other guy, isn't it? And you go against your conscience in that type of situation, which also means you're really going against your own best interest. And if you would take that risk to go according to your own conscience, you will also feel a little bit guilty, right? In case somebody might disapprove or, challenge. So what I'm saying is that we have to challenge that. Because if you look at it really, in the cold light of logic, it's really not okay. But the conditioning and all this stuff that has gone into setting up people to listen to something and make you feel guilty for doing the right thing. You know, it's quite a big thing to, go against. So, I've been thinking about this for a few decades, because you have to find a good strategy so that you can actually reclaim your personal power. Because I think it's very much to do with that. So, the conditioning that you have had through all your life has to be undone. So, I mean, it's quite a large amount of work, but it has to be done, because if we don't do that, then we remain in a condition of self-sabotage. There's no need, right? So, how did this all get set up? Who invented all this stuff? Who are the elites, the external moral authorities? Well, the first set of people that you will meet who will teach you these things are your parents. Is that right? Who you absolutely love and adore, and who are perfect people, right? You all have perfect parents, yes? No. They're just people like anybody else, and they're not perfect. But from the angle of a child growing up, if you think your parents are not perfect, that's worse than suicide. So you have to think your parents are perfect, isn't it? Think of it from the angle of a child. Everybody was a child at some point. So these are the first ones. And why do they do that? Because their parents did that. And so it goes back through the generations. And it's a kind of automatic mechanism. And to, put a spanner in that works is quite a big thing, but we have to do that somehow. Now, the next set of people who train you in this way are your teachers, right? Good people, moral people, but they reinforce that whole thing and prepare you to be good citizens, but with that twist, And the third group of people who are the elite, who decide what's right and wrong, is of course the religious leaders, right? And, it's very, very strong, all of these attitudes, prevailing social attitudes, and it's really out of this that comes the difficulties that we face in the terms of racism, sexism, all the various isms that come along that actually cause you to feel less than, and to doubt this voice, right? So how do we change that in 5 minutes? They don't give me very much time. Well, I think what we have to begin to do is to consider these external moral authorities, parents, teachers, religious leaders. They come from a long line of people who figured out that, whatever we think is right because there's nobody else to tell any other way, so it becomes a tradition, But what has happened is they basically failed us. They failed us because if it had succeeded, one of the big problems I have with the conventional morality is it's enforced through violence. If you want someone to do the right thing and they don't want to do it, you slap them around a bit, and then they'll learn, isn't it? But nobody ever actually learned what's right and wrong through being violated. They endure it, but they don't actually learn from it, you see. So when you examine it very dispassionately, you find that it's completely ineffective and illogical, irrational, and incoherent, and so on and so forth. And the great question is, how come we so powerfully follow that which intellectually we can figure out that it doesn't actually stand up? And I think one of the reasons is that our conscience has lost functionality through us having gone against it so much. So therefore, what I'm suggesting is that we need to take a risk, an enormous risk. Are you ready to take a big risk? From today, from now, whenever you come, which is at least 4 or 5 times a day, into some situation where you have to make a moral decision, follow the voice of your conscience. Every time. And by chance, if you decide that you have done something wrong, which occasionally happens, right? We all make mistakes every day. And so what happens if you do something wrong? It's probably not going to be like really big, but even if it is, if you do something wrong, allow yourself to feel guilty only for 1 second. That's quite enough. A lot of people think they have to feel guilty for a whole week, or a whole year, or maybe 10 years, 20 years, depending on how bad the crime is, but it's not necessary. Because the experience of feeling guilty is just an inner feeling that tells you, hey, you did something wrong. Don't do it again. And you say, oh, yeah, all right, I won't do it again. That's it. You see. So, and if you don't do something wrong, but you start to feel guilty, stop it. Because there's no point in feeling guilty when you didn't do something wrong, right? Especially not like, for a long time, because what happens is when you feel guilty, it drains your spiritual energy. It doesn't actually do anything other than that. So do you really want to drain your spiritual energy? I don't think so. 1 second is quite sufficient. Oops. No. And even if you're halfway through doing something wrong and you notice it and you feel half a second guilty, you can actually stop it and go in a different direction. This is also possible. Yeah. Oops. I shouldn't be saying that. Like stop. Okay. Actually, what I really mean is some other thing. So, you simply follow the voice of your conscience about big things and little things. And it's very, very risky because you have a lot of predisposition to doubt it. So you're going to have to override it, go against it. And every time you going against the voice of conscience, you're making a victory. Because your conscience corresponds to your soul. It's one of the parts of your soul, you see. And this is why you can be confident about it and trust it, you see. Following the voice of conscience is like trusting yourself. And then you start to be the one who operates on the basis of an inner moral authority. And as time goes by, and you get greater confidence with this, because you see, every time you follow the voice of conscience, your instrument of conscience regains functionality. And it'll, let you know very clearly, very easily what's what and who's who, you see. You cannot deceive an honest person. Have you heard that? But if you're going against your conscience, it's difficult to be an honest person. Because there's self-deception involved. When you start listening to the voice of your conscience, you actually become very, very clear, and you also become independent of needing somebody's approval in order to be okay, for example, you see, because public opinion is very fickle. And if somebody knows that you're looking for approval, well, they're not going to give it. And you're like a puppet on a string because they play you. Don't do that. So yeah, follow the voice of conscience. Become right with yourself. Especially if you get the idea, which we think in Brahma Kumaris, in Raj Yoga, we have this idea that everyone is a soul and souls are forever, and so you have to be with yourself, you have to live with yourself forever. You don't have to live with these other people. They come and go. But yourself, forever. So you can be right with yourself, that's fine. Someone loves you, that's great. Someone doesn't love you, have a nice day, Oh, I'm terribly sorry you don't like me, and I'm a really nice person. You don't like me, that's not my problem, that's your problem. To be able to have such trust in the self, to trust your judgment, to trust your instincts, to trust yourself that you know what to do, when to do, how not to do. You're really claiming your personal freedom. And a person who is free, self-responsible, that's a powerful person, And it's a really nice feeling to be in your own power, don't you think? And so when you, at the end of the day, just play back the videotape of your day. Everybody's on CCTV, so somebody's playing back you at some level. But you can play back your own self. Take a few minutes at the end of the day and notice where you sabotage yourself for the purpose of not doing it again, because it's completely unnecessary and it weakens you unnecessarily. If people are weak, they can be manipulated. So if you can get people to weaken themselves, then you don't have to do it. But if people don't weaken themselves, listen to themselves, follow your heart, follow your soul, you reacquire your power, and you then become a leader, a role model for other people, because people are looking for those who are right with themselves, isn't it? We talk a lot about leadership. Leadership has nothing to do with electing a prime minister or a party or something like that. It's really that a person who is their own person, they're a leader. Around you, there are people, and they're always watching you. People are looking for someone who is having that integrity. And when they see somebody like that, doesn't matter who it is, they will they'll take inspiration. You see, that's leadership, and that's power. You see, because all around us things are a little bit breaking down, and the things that used to be what you have faith in, they tend to fail us, isn't it? So who do you have to rely on? Yourself. So when you're right with yourself, you're in your power, then the acts that you do could be a thought, could be some words that you say or that you write, or could be some actions that you do. Those actions are powerful actions because they come from a clear conscience, you see. And that's called pure karma. And when you do pure karma, you get pure fruits. That means everything will go positively for you. And if by chance something appears to be negative, you look at it through that lens of wisdom and you turn it to your advantage. Or this is a test, or this is a lesson, or whatever. It makes you more powerful. So it's the end of my story. Thank you. Om Shanti.